Jessie L. Weston's From Ritual to Romance. Chapter 2. The Task of the Hero. When the cause of the Fisher King dies before the hero has achieved the task and can take its place, the good Fisher King is dead. There is no cure of the king or restoration of the land. The specific task of the Grail hero is never accomplished. He comes into his kingdom as the result of a number of knightly adventures, neither more nor less significant than those found in non-Grail romances. The Perles Vows, in its present form, appears to be a later and more fully developed treatment of the motif noted in Christian, i.e., that of the misfortunes of the king and the country are directly due to the quester himself, and had no antecedent existence. This, I would submit, alters the whole character of the story, and we are at a loss to know what, had the hero put the question on the occasion of the first visit, could possibly have been the result achieved. It would not have been the cure of the king. He was apparently in perfect health. It would not have been the restoration to verdure of the king, to verdure of the land. The land was not waste, whereas in the case of Gawain, there is a dead knight whose death is to be avenged. Something might have been achieved. In the case of the overwhelming majority of the Perceval versions, which do not contain this feature of the dependent of the curse upon the quester, reduces the story to incoherence. In one Perceval version alone, we find a motif analogous to the early Gawain Blaheris form. In Manchester, in Manessir, the hero's task is not restricted to the simple asking of a question, but he must also slay the enemy whose treachery has caused the death of the Fisher King's brother, thereby healing the wound of the king himself and removing the woes of the land. What these may be, we are not told, but apparently the country is not waste. In Paradur, we have a version closely agreeing with that of Chrétien. The hero fails to inquire the meaning of what he sees in the Castle of Wonders, and is told in consequence, "Hadst thou done so, the king would have been restored to health, and his dominions to peace, whereas from henceforth he will have to endure battles and conflicts, and the knights will perish, and wives will be widowed, and maidens will be left portionless, and all this because of thee." This certainly seems to imply that, while the illness of the Fisher King may be antecedent to and independent of the visit and failure of the hero, the misfortunes which fall on the land have been directly caused thereby. The conclusion which states that the bleeding head seen by the hero was thy cousin's, and he was killed by the sorceresses of Gloucester, who also lamed thine uncle, and there is a prediction that thou art to avenge these things, would seem to indicate the presence in the original of a vengeance theme, such as that referred to above. In Parzival, the stress is laid entirely on the sufferings of the king. The question has been modified in the interest of this theme, and here assumes the form, "What aileth thee, mine uncle?" The blame bestowed on the hero is solely on account of the prolonged sorrow his silence has inflicted on king and people of a land laid waste, either through drought or war. There is no mention. You should have pitied the host and king, to whom God did this wondrous thing. You asked not of his grief and dread. So though you live, your bliss is dead. When unconsoled the fisher sat, so sorrowful and full of grief, why would you not give him relief? The punishment falls on the hero, who has failed to put the question, rather than on the land, which indeed appears to be no way affected either by the wound of the king or the silence of the hero. The divergence from Chrétien's version is here very marked, and so far seems to have been neglected by critics. The point is also of importance in view of the curious parallels which are otherwise to be found between this version and the Per les Vos. Here, the Per le Vou, I'm not sure how you're supposed to pronounce it. Do you pronounce the S? Here the two are in marked contradiction with one another. The question finally asked, the result is, as indicated in the prose version, the restoration of the king is not merely to health, but also to youth. Over his skin there spread a blush. Flore, the Frenchman, called this flush. His face at once became so fair, it made Parzival's beauty vain as air, and that of Absalom, David's son, and Vergulahat of Ascalon, all who from birth in beauty grew, like Gah Muret, as men well knew, when into Convolise he went, his glory seeming heaven sent. All these in no way could compare with King Enfortes' beauty rare. When cured and freed of all his ills, he proved that God has wondrous skills. Galahad, in the final form assumed by the story that preserved in the quest, the achievement of the task is not preceded by any failure on the part of the hero, and the advantages derived therefrom are personal and spiritual, although we are incidentally told that he heals the fisher king's father, and also the old king, Mordrain's, whose life has been preternaturally prolonged. In the case of the latter, it is to be noted that the mere fact of Galahad's being the predestined winner suffices, and the healing takes place before the quest is definitely achieved. There is no wasteland, and the wounding of the two kings is entirely unconnected with Galahad. We find hints in the story of Lambar of a knowledge of the earlier form, but for all practical purposes, it has disappeared from the story. Analyzing the above statements, we find that the results may be grouped under certain definite headings. There is a general consensus of evidence to the effect that the main object of the quest is the restoration to health and vigor of a king suffering from infirmity caused by wounds, sickness, or old age, and whose infirmity, for some mysterious and unexplained reason, reacts disastrously upon his kingdom, either depriving it of vegetation or exposing it to the ravages of war. In two cases, it is definitely stated that the king will be restored to youthful vigor and beauty. In both cases, where we find Gawain as the hero of the story, and in one connected with Percival, the misfortune which has fallen upon the country is that of a prolonged drought, which has destroyed vegetation and left the land waste. The effect of the hero's question is to restore the waters to their channel and render the land once more fertile. In 3 cases, the misfortunes and wasting of the land are the result of war, and directly caused by the hero's failure to ask the question. We are not dealing with an antecedent condition. This, in my opinion, constitutes a marked difference between the 2 groups, which has not hitherto received the attention it deserves. One aim of our present investigation will be to determine which of these 2 forms should be considered the elder. Now, might notice I'm not talking right. I've fell and got the wind knocked out of me. I don't think anything's broken, but that's why.